Forum, and we will be discussing leadership and integrity in light of many an issue that we'll get to shortly. But we start with the top story on the Daily Nation this morning, and that is Governor's fury as Uhuru blocks cash. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has slammed the governors and senators' demands for more cash, saying the government had no money to give them. The president hit out at governors, saying the counties had nothing to show for the billions given to them in the last 7 years. And as Kennedy's Mureithi reports, the president has once again called on the devolved units to ensure prudent use of finances and end the culture of graft instead of asking for more money.
The president hoped to silence the debate on revenue sharing when he offered his position on the matter.
Tunataka kaunti zetu zifanye kazi, ni kweli. Lakini ukienda uitishe pesa ambaye haipo, itatoka wapi?
According to the president, the counties had little to show for the billions already gobbled up since the onset of devolution, with most of the cash lining the pockets of only a few. He says the counties should live within their means.
Kuna mtu mmoja peke yake anaunda pesa, na huyo ni mtu anaitwa Devolution na anaishi pale Nairobi. Sisi wengine wote ni tutoe jasho ndio tuone pesa.
The governors have kept up the argument that starving them of cash was a threat to devolution and have filed a case at the Supreme Court seeking an interpretation of the matter in line with the Constitution.
Tafadhalini, magavana, tumieni ile mko naye kwanza sawa. Sisi wote tupambane na ufisadi, badala ya pesa kuingia mifuko ya wachache na kunonesha tumbo zao. Fanyinieni wananchi kazi.
Tukiweza kuzuia ufisadi, tunaweza kusave kila mwaka bilioni 800.
Mimi nakuhakikishia tuko na wewe. Mambo ni magumu, wezidi kutoa pingu.
The sentiments by President Uhuru Kenyatta coming just a day after the chairperson of the Council of Governors, Wycliffe Oparanya, called on him to intervene in the ongoing stalemate that has seen both houses of parliament table and pass their different division of revenue bills, and also the Council of Governors accusing the national government of plotting to kill devolution.
Kama bunge ama seneti munasema waongezwe pesa, sawa sawa, kateni mishahara yenu, fanya yale mengine, mupatie county pesa. Mimi sina.
The president, who spoke at the burial of former Gatanga MP Peter Kenneth's mom, Rahab Muhoni, called on counties to seal the graft loopholes as he rallied the country behind his resolve to fight deeply entrenched corruption. Kennedy Mureithi, NTV.
And in what could further sully the already sour relationships between the two houses of parliament, the National Assembly Division of Revenue approved the revised Division of Revenue Bill, disregarding the Senate's version of the bill, and in what is turning out to be a never-ending vicious circle, the Senate is expected to consider the National Assembly's bill and either approve or reject it. Vincent Odwor reports that the battle lines have been drawn even as the Supreme Court urges dialogue.
The National Assembly set the stage for yet another round of confrontation with the Senate as it unanimously adopted the revised Division of Revenue Bill, allocating 316 billion shillings to the counties.
The Constitution says minimum 15%. Today, in 310 or 316, we are giving the counties close to 34%. So when you go to court or to go to the Supreme Court and you are accusing us of breaking the law, there is no law that is being broken.
The National Assembly's move now sets off a chain of reaction, retracing a familiar line. The Senate, that has already approved its own version of the bill, allocating 335 billion shillings to the counties, is expected to consider the National Assembly's bill and either approve it or reject it. The National Assembly, it appears, it's getting ready for a contest.
Because as a House, we believe that the Senate has no role in this bill. Mr. Speaker, after the third reading, I request and beseech you take this bill to the President for assent. The Senate had come down to 327. How come now they have printed another bill with 335? That just shows you a House that is not interested, is not committed to mediation, a House that is just grandstanding.
The Senate had forwarded its version of the bill to the National Assembly, but it was disregarded. In what could likely be an endless cycle, another joint mediation committee with representatives from the National Assembly and the Senate will be formed to try and resolve the stalemate if both houses fail yet again to agree on a figure. The Supreme Court, which is still reluctant to intervene in the matter, and in a case filed by the Council of Governors, urged both houses of Parliament to dialogue by Wednesday. But it appears the Supreme Court will once again have to pronounce itself on the matter as both sides refuse to yield. Vincent Oduor, NTV.
Meanwhile, the governors chose not to respond to the president on the revenue stalemate that they say has starved them of crucial funds and was a threat to devolution. Their sentiments were echoed by the Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa, who led the Council of Governors in a session of introspection on the state of devolution since its birth in 2013. Here's Bridget Ngana with the details.
When they said graduated
It was a somewhat painstaking decision for the governors to not respond to the president and instead peg their hope for more revenue on the Supreme Court's decision. But the stalemate over the division of revenue was a constant feature in their discussion that focused on the future of devolution.
Nataka niseme ya kwamba hii katiba inatiba hata kwa ugonjwa wa malumbano kama hayo. Najua ya kwamba we had one house being the upper house. This is a sibling rivalry. These supremacy battles that affect devolution and other matters will be a thing of the past.
The governors who were taking stock of the state of devolution are of the view that 7 years on, the devolved units still remained under the national government's tight grip, this only serving to widen the divisions over revenue sharing.
Inequality between counties remain extreme. And in many cases, the inequality is even worse. Within the same counties, you find within the same counties, there are more wards favored than others.
The governors only half-heartedly admitted that devolution had failed to deliver on its promise to the public.
Going by observations, media reports, and complaints from the citizens, devolution seems to be failing to live to its promise, particularly on the area of accountability.
The counties have been criticized for extravagant spending in non-priority areas, with some of its officials accused of feathering their own nests. The president only echoing calls for more financial accountability in the counties. Bridget Ngana, NTV, Nakuru.
have said.
Now to the dams probe. Investigators probing the Aurora and Kimwarer dams scandal have now turned to asset recovery to reclaim the proceeds of the multi-billion scandal possibly stashed abroad. Director of Public Prosecutions Nuruddin Haji is seeking mutual legal assistance from the United Kingdom and Italy, but is yet to receive information from the two jurisdictions. Mel Miendo reports that the ODPP is ready to issue arrest warrants for those who fail to surrender to the DCI by Friday.
Following the arrest of persons suspected to be behind the 19 billion shilling dam scam, the DPP is now looking to repatriate the proceeds of graft stashed in foreign countries and will be banking on the help of his counterparts.
The investigations of the second phase are still ongoing. As I've told you and I told you earlier, we have applied for mutual legal assistance to both Italy and the United Kingdom, and we are working on getting more information on that.
Haji maintains those caught in the web of graft claims should step aside. President Uhuru Kenyatta, in a stop-game measure, only named an interim replacement for Rotich. Only Principal Secretary Kamau Thuge was substantively replaced.
It's a very timely judgment that will help us. This is what I've been pursuing and trying to ensure that those who are charged, who are public officers, once they are charged, they step aside.
Of the 28 persons named by the DPP, only 15 appeared in court on Tuesday. Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti directed those absent to present themselves at the DCI headquarters by Friday this week. They include Italian construction company CMC Di Ravenna's director Paolo Pocelli and 2 other representatives of the company.
Those who will not be there on Friday, you know the ruling that was given, that we will be free to now issue arrest warrants.
The DPP was speaking alongside the federal prosecutor of Brazil, who paid him a courtesy call. The Brazilian prosecutor also shared a software for analyzing phone records and accounts during evidence gathering. Prosecutors from the country are also set to undergo training in Brazil. Mel Miendo, NTV.
Even as investigations continue into how government officials colluded to defraud the taxpayer of 19 billion shillings in the Aror and Kimwarere dams scandal, it is now emerging that the country could lose another 11 billion to Italian company CMC Di Ravenna, which is at the center of the scam, should it terminate the contract to construct the Itare Dam in Nakuru County. Water and Sanitation Cabinet Secretary Simon Chelugui says the government is considering asking the company to subcontract the works.
Because we have had hope that on engagement of these people, if we are able to assign the works to maybe a contractor who is able to deliver while retaining the loan, because the moment we lose the loan and the funds, we may have to now look for alternative sources, which may not be easy and ready. And by the time we get the project integrity, the progress of works, and permanent works which would have been done, might be rendered unuseful, and we may have to redo again from square one.
Now, Treasury has a new boss. Ambassador Ukur Yatani, the president's unlikely pick for the Plum office, took his new responsibilities, exuding confidence he will deliver even as he reflects on his unlikely journey to one of the most critical ministries in government. NTV's Brenda Wanga reports.
The National Treasury, miles away, even figuratively from Marsabit, the home of the newest holder of the docket. The wall of prestige that tells tales of history, framed with different faces and faces in the country's economic leadership. Ukuru Kanacho Yatani makes his way to his new posting, acknowledging the unlikelihood of his appointment. His path to the Treasury made possible by the hasty and disgraced exit of Henry Rotich that has thrust the Cabinet Secretary for Labour and Social Services onto the hot seat that is stationed at this ministry in acting capacity.
To be honest, I've never imagined, leave alone being a CS Treasury, even serving as a CS in the government of Kenya.
From Forole, Marsabit County, where he was born, to a life in public service that has seen him work in the then provincial administration, then later elected as Member of Parliament, and in 2013 as Governor, the diplomat now holds 2 cabinet portfolios. To him, this is all beyond his wildest dreams.
Knowing where I come from, the humility, I also come from one of the most far away, most difficult parts of this country. Growing up as a young man, of a pastoralist, and going through education, not from the comfort of my family's home, through boarding schools to where I've been, I can only thank God for what He has done for me.
He knows there will be need for readjustments, and he cannot afford to just sit pretty, especially with the heat that the seat brings.
And I have no illusions in my mind that I have to do it, and I have to do it the best of my abilities, so that I don't let down the president and I don't let down Kenyans.
His faith in God and a knack for honesty are what he says he is counting on in his new integrity-demanding assignment. Although it is still uncertain for how long the acting CS will be at the Treasury, he is confident that by the time he leaves, he will have made a positive impact in the management of the country's finances. Brenda Wanga, NTV, Nairobi.
Now let's take a look at what's making news on the newspapers. We start with the Daily Nation. Governor's fury, that is a headline, sorry. Governor's fury as Uhuru blocks a cash. And there is a story, of course, on the end of the Akasha drugs empire. When we get to page 4, we stick with that story on, or rather the Daily Nation sticks to that story on revenue sharing. County bosses stick to their guns in row over sharing of cash. And on page 5, revenue crisis deepens as MPs approve 316 billion for counties, all of which are stories we ran earlier this morning. Again, Akasha Empire about to crumble as their heir apparent faces time in jail. Cabinet, which is another story we carried, Cabinet to decide the fate of the 35.7 billion Itare Dam. As the story pointed out, government has already paid 11 billion to CMC Diravena, and should it terminate that particular contract, we stand to lose all the money we've spent. We have a story on a Kenyan caught with drugs jailed for life in China, and that is on page 9 of the Daily Nation. Again, back on page 8, we see Atani saying, I will focus on the Big Four agenda. That's the last story we carried and done by Brenda Wanga. Now, this is an interesting one. This is the ex-City Hall official, yes, Kiambi, who is facing more charges. The court ruled that he should pay government back about a little over 300 million, about 317 million. Now, Lobby wants parents to raise 500 million for its activities. That is also on page 10. And when we go into the agricultural sector, we have a potato raised to save country's second most crucial staple. That is on page 12 of the Daily Nation. Crops and livestock face extinction due to rising temperatures. And yes, so let's look at the op-ed pages. We have decay in our nation so deep we ought to engage the best brains. And then in our editorial cartoon, who do we have in this particular cartoon? I think we have Bobby Wine and Museveni. And yeah, it's proving to be quite humorous. We have a story on why cockroaches could be the next superfood savior of humanity. Yesterday we hosted the gentleman who feeds on roaches from Soweto in Kibera, and his name is Geoffrey Lugai, and he says roaches, according to him, if they can survive a nuclear holocaust, would help his body strengthen and toughen up. We have, again, synthetic farm chemicals boost harvest, and let's focus on energy to be competitive. That is on page 18 of the Daily Nation. Now, in county news, we have something from the Nairobi County. City property owners to know, city property owners to know specific fees in new land rates. Also from Nairobi, acting county secretary was in office illegally. Yes, Ruto allies, and that is on page 22 of the county roundup. Ruto allies in Western differ over plan for deal with DP ahead of 2022 elections. And in Eastern province, squatters on factory land in fear of planned sale to revive firm. We have news from all the counties in this county wrap. And finally, agency flies in to help Narok wheat farmers fend off Quelea invasion. And clan threatens to boycott census over boundary dispute. Police on the spot over brutality cases, and Masai Kamba trade barbs over livestock theft. I will leave the Daily Nation at that point. Let's take a look at what else is in the other papers. Yes, now this, of course, is in relation to the events that President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto attended yesterday. The Star's headline is, I don't care who will succeed me, and that is Uhuru. And under that it says, DP William Ruto pledges loyalty to the head of state, but reminds him of the promises they made together as Jubilee leaders in 2013. I'll read that again. DP William Ruto pledges loyalty to the head of state, but reminds him of the promises they made together as Jubilee leaders in 2013. Now, on the People Daily this morning, it has to do with corruption. 21 billion paid to Italians lost. State admits legal advisory by Solicitor General dims any hope of Kenya recovering the money paid to the contractor, and also says Nairobi has to pay interest on an outstanding debt. Under that, they break down the billions. They say 11.5 billion is the amount which was paid upfront as insurance premium for Aurora and Kimwarer. 46 billion, the initial cost of the two dams whose construction was supposed to begin in 2015. Please note, we are in 2019. And 63 billion is a revised total spend for both dams meant to benefit residents of Elgeyo Marakwet County. Interesting story on the side here as well. Rift Valley, the capital of betting. According to a survey, That should be interesting. On the Business Daily, soda, bottled water to cost more in carries 3.6 billion tax. Also on the front page of the Business Daily, shilling weekends to 104, 2-year low to the dollar. Then we have, on the ticker, we have regulator warns KPC on oil leak tech, primary school book plan altered, and finally ARM cement units sale hit by lawsuit. And the photo there is of the launch of the Bidco Industrial Park in Ruiro. That happened yesterday. Now, we've already gone through the Daily Nation. What was on the front page is Governor's fury as Uhuru blocks cash. And finally, on the front page of the Standard, hot politics. Who does Sudi speak for? I've been wondering that one myself. Under that, it says Kapseret MP does not mince his words and has come out as an astute defender of interests that include powerful forces in the Rift Valley. And finally, no extra cash, Uhuru tells governors. Similar to what is on the Daily Nation, right? And we'll get into that particular conversation. Let me first introduce my guests. On my left, there's Ambassador Erastus Mwencha. Happy to have you.
Thank you so
Good
much.
morning. Early morning.
Yeah.
Oh, you're used to getting up this early.
Well, but I was coming, I saw an accident on the road, and I could tell that it's going to be a tough road, on Langata Road.
Okay, there you have it. You have your traffic update. But it's unfortunate that there was an accident. We also have Maria Beneka. She is a council member of the Law Society of Kenya and the Laikipia County First Lady. But here in her capacity as a council member of the Law Society of Kenya, happy to have you as well, Maria. Is it your first time on NTV?
I believe it is.
It is, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, we're very happy to host you. Yeah. Steve Ogola is more familiar, I guess, because he's been on NTV a number of times, on NTV Today, on AM Live, and on Sidebar. Is it your first time on AM Live, Steve?
I've been here before.
You've been here before?
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. And I'm Olive Burrows, filling in for Dibal Ainia, who will be back next week. So I'll start with asking you guys, what do you think of President Uhuru Kenyatta's statement yesterday, that there simply is not enough money to increase the allocation to the county? Steve, I'll start with you.
It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable because the president does not have the mandate to determine what goes to the counties. I mean, let's say it as it is. That's the functional mandate of the Commission on Revenue Allocation. And once the Commission on Revenue Allocation makes the determination, it has to have a binding effect. And what the Commission on Revenue Allocation has granted the government is a very little amount. 335 billion is lesser than some of the core ministries, the funding of some of the core ministries. The difference, because governors are, Parliament passed about 310 billion, and governors are requiring 327 billion. The difference is less than 17 billion. I don't think the government will grind to a halt if the additional funds are disbursed. But even if it did, the president does not have the single mandate of determining what revenue goes to the counties. He can't, in short. But again, as usual, politics is played according to what is convenient at the time, not necessarily what the law prescribes.
All right, but do you think the senators, the majority in Senate, will now change their tune, given President Uhuru Kenyatta's remarks, Maria?
I think it behooves the senators to actually take up their mandate with regards to the law, because if you look at all the arms of the state, everybody has a responsibility to act in accordance with their mandate as set out in the Constitution or any given law. Now, when you look at revenue allocation, and now this dance between the National Assembly and the Senate, and eventually the casualty, which is devolution, you're left to wonder really what's going on, because you remember that the governors actually marched just the other day.
Yes.
And they went to court, and the matter is before court. Actually, Steve is representing the Law Society as an interested party in that matter. And the court gave directions that parties should actually seek to mediate so that we can get a solution to this problem. So when you have a tough stance by any side, it does not help Mwananchi or Wanjiko at the end of the day, because what is happening is the COG is advising that services are grinding to a halt at the county level. The national government says we don't have money, the National Assembly goes on to publish the revenue bill yesterday in the paper.
Yes.
So that you're seeing, for me, you know, a casualty when it comes to also the law. When you look at the judiciary seized of the matter. We were expecting a direction from the judiciary, which was that you go back and speak, let the parties speak to one another. So I think the senators here have an opportunity to show that they understand the law and they are the guardians of devolution, because at the end of the day, the Constitution is very clear about power and its devolvement, because if you look at the values and the principles of the Constitution, they're very clear that power goes down to the people. And how does it go down to the people? Through devolution. So Senate must take a stand and protect devolution at this point.
Okay, based on the stories we ran, you know, you get the sense that all the parties have already drawn the line in the sand. Ambassador Wensha, what do you think it'll take to get the ball rolling on dialogue?
Thank you, Oliver. I think the legal mind has spoken. I was going to be very cautious in speaking because the matter is in court, but I've taken the advice of the lawyers here. I think what we are witnessing in the country, the wrangle between the Senate and of course the lower house, is not playing out well for the people of Kenya. Chapter 11 of our Constitution establishes the devolution. But if you look at the spirit of our Constitution, as Steve has said, and I think this is what also Maria said, it clearly delineates and assigns responsibility to various organs of the state. And I think unless we stay within our mandate, it makes it very difficult for Mwananchi to know what is happening and how to navigate in such a very murky territory. I think Steve said it very clearly at the beginning that who is responsible for revenue allocation is very clear. And because of that, I think we're still operating in the old mindset when the executive allocated resources, but that we've migrated from there. We're now in that new dispensation. And I think unless we start to allow the Constitution take root and nurture it, we are really drifting into a very dangerous state. And I'm not even sure that, the mess between the two houses should have been thrown to the judiciary. And you can see the Chief Justice was in a very hard situation, because then he says, look, why are you before me really? Can't you go and sort it out? And while this one hopes would have been done, but the question you ask, they have drawn red lines. And so we must go back to the judiciary. So I think then we should advisedly stay away from commenting if we want to respect our Constitution. First of all, in terms of who shares revenue, but the matter is before court, let's stay away.
All right. We're joined by Alamin Kimathi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy to have you. I hope you didn't encounter any traffic this morning.
No, it was smooth sailing. I had to go to the mosque first.
Good. We're getting traffic updates from our guests this morning. So I want us to move on to the question of leadership and integrity, which is what brought us here this morning. Yesterday, Ukur Yatani took up office. We saw him in Treasury. We heard him say that his focus is on financing the Big Four agenda. A lot of people are saying his appointment came as a surprise. Alamin, did it come as a surprise to you?
Well, nothing surprises me anymore, so it didn't come as a surprise. I think when we talk of, maybe I just make a small opening statement that leadership and integrity, when we look at where we are at the moment, we are facing a crisis of both leadership and a crisis of integrity. We have deficit in integrity across the board, not just within the institutions of state, but across the body politic. We also lack leadership to get us out of so many of these issues, even what I found you discussing here. we are in the bog because really nobody's taking real leadership in these issues. And we will continuously get ourselves stuck because what it takes to provide the direction or leadership for this nation is not what we are injecting. We are stuck in crises that are made out of a culture of dishonesty that has gripped this nation. We are not honest with ourselves. We are not honest even at the very low levels, and take it up. We will find ourselves in a lot of crises. So when we try to, whatever attempts that we are trying to, to plug these crises, even pulling out surprises on us, it's not going to work until we really come back and get to the bottom of some of these issues. Constitutional crisis, for instance, what we are now discussing about, we're looking at the squabbles, the pulls and pushes that we are seeing, would have fixed this if we didn't look at the Constitution. We're not looking at fixing the Constitution from very, very selfish interests. You see now the constitutional debate that we're having is about, we are talking about really, it comes from what do I get out of the Constitution? How do I fix this Constitution to work for me to get on the table, come and eat? Whereas there are still real constitutional issues that this country needs to be looking at. For instance, fixing what we didn't fix about the Senate and the National Assembly right from the beginning. We can't now, in this crisis that we are having, and even in the kind of suggestions that we're making to come out, we won't be able to fix it now. Because we polarized the country, we put the country in a situation that we are only looking at. Even when we're talking about referendum right now, we actually look at a very binary situation. And we're pitting the country into two camps. You either take it or leave it. But there's no really leadership that is coming in to tell us, look, there is a way of handling issues without really having to be caught up in the political camps that we have divided this country into.
Okay, I was talking to George Morar of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and he told me we keep having the same conversation. Steve, how do we get out of this bog that Alamin makes reference to?
First of all, a comment on Ukur Yatani's elevation, because that's what he seems to consider it to be. Well, there's something nice in terms of he seems to wear power with humility, which is what the Constitution requires. The only problem is that he seems to be subservient to the president and not to the Constitution. Now there's a challenge there. Over-celebration of the executive of the presidency is not necessarily consistent with our ideal or the ideals that the Constitution intends to deepen and require of us. He should understand that if he intends to excel, he should not worry how to place the president. If he intends to excel as the CS Treasury, he should worry about faithful commitment to the Constitution and that mandate. Because all that has been articulated very well in the Constitution. We just need CSs, cabinet secretaries, who are faithful to the Constitution. Of course, if you are faithful to the Constitution, by extension, you'll be loyal to the president, because the president has taken an oath of office to defend and protect the Constitution. So I think it's a good thing. For me, it came as a surprise, because in terms of visibility, it's not the kind of visible CS that maybe he works quietly and the president has confidence in him. That's a good thing. But now let him know that he should not fear, that and let him not work with caution, that because CS Rotich failed, he may also fail. No. Kenyans are not going to judge him based on the history of that treasury. He will be judged based on his own performance. And if he's done well in the last term and in his previous posting, he certainly will excel if he continues with that mandate of, the way he's already expressed himself. But in terms of the crisis of governance in this country,
Okay, let me just not do the same disservice.
Yes.
Let me ask Maria whether Yatani's appointment came as a surprise to you, because I remember the names that were floated. We had Esther Koimet, we had James Macharia, Aden Mohammed, given their backgrounds in banking. We had Mkisa Kitui floated as one of the candidates. Did it come as a surprise to you?
Well, actually, I think for me, I'd say it was a pleasant surprise.
Okay.
Because one, it was not expected, and it's clear that the presidency is thinking differently now, and not pandering to the common advice or whatever people are putting out there. And I want to believe it was a considered view, and before that decision was made. I think it's a good thing that he's a former governor. That's what we need to remember. And perhaps it's a plus now, given the crisis that we are facing, that this is somebody who understands, having been in the front seat or the driving seat of running a devolved unit, and one that is marginalized for that matter. So I would expect that as a former governor, he understands the responsibility that he's faced with, not just when it comes to devolution, of course, but allocation of resources, because everything starts with the treasury. How the planning is done, what the budgets that are presented to Parliament by the treasury, and just fiscal responsibility as a country starts there. And if we start on the wrong foot, if we don't give the proper and clear direction that we're taking as a country, then we are going to get lost. So for me, it's a good thing that he's fresh of breath, breath of fresh air, and that we expect that he will deliver, in fidelity to the Constitution, because I think he understands what it really means.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Ambassador Mancha. He himself is an ambassador. Have you had opportunity to work with him?
I think beyond being an ambassador, what I see him is also a fellow economist, as I am, and I will take it that he's firmly grounded in his economics, besides the leadership qualities that he has demonstrated. And I think Steve made a very good point that he seems to assume his office with humility. I listened to his statement yesterday. He's one of the person who says, I didn't deserve it. And I think this is one of the qualities that we should see of a leader. Many of the leaders claw their way up to leadership. They destroy others in order to get to the top. But good leaders sometimes are pushed up or pulled from above because of what people would have noticed. And I would imagine the president, in appointing him, he has used this network to really scrutinize who he is. And so the first thing I want to do is, first of all, to wish him well in this very tough job, because if you've been in an area where you control finance, it's a very tough job, and especially in days of shortages and the rest. And I think Maria's brought in a very good point that, look, the processes of treasury is where the foundations are laid, particularly for budget processing. How are you planning? How are you doing this? I mean, one of the tenets of the Constitution is to allow participation of the people. And you can see there is an aspect that was not properly done in this respect. And I think he should take good advice, since he knows now the issues of devolution, to ensure that the process, the foundations of budget making is transparent, is well done, and of course, you are not going to be able to satisfy the needs, and especially when you have all these gaps and leakages. And what he needs now to do is, as I think Steve said very well, play fidelity to the Constitution.
Okay. Alamin, I'm afraid to ask you this question because you're not a political analyst, but you're welcome to say you're not comfortable answering it. But, the reason it came as a surprise to me was because, we had this idea of President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto sort of divided the cabinet appointments between themselves, and, everybody had their person. That mtu wetu, kind of thing. So since Henry Rotich is from a certain part of Kenya, we expect that somebody from the same part of Kenya would have been appointed to that post, to keep the well, let me just call it, those are political considerations, that some of us imagined would take place. Is that also part of the reason that it came as a surprise to you, Alamin?
If I remember well, Henry Rotich himself, came into the treasury not by dint of him being from the Kalenjin community, if we make it so blunt. He was actually an Uhuru appointee. He was not a Ruto appointee, if we are very clear about that. So for me, I would have still expected that the treasury was the president's patch. And therefore, it's for him to get an appointee who comes from his corner, you know, if we're talking about the politics. And I didn't expect that the other camp would carry sway when it came to the appointment. Therefore, if I see Ukur Yatani as coming from the president's corner rather than the deputy president.
But following his arraignment, you still hear a bit of that Mtuwetu narrative. You know, a person is being persecuted.
Yes.
And you know, of course, as has become typical on the Kenyan landscape. Now, we tend to tie every decision to the 2022 politics. You know, they're trying to stand in the way of William Ruto's presidential ambitions.
Are we really going to run away from that in our politics currently? This is, I think it's a fact that whatever appointment is going to be made, there's still going to be an eye, small or large one, on 2022.
Okay. Something else that happened yesterday in the dialogue between, it appeared as though President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto were talking to one another from the podium. And, you know, we had President Uhuru Kenyatta saying, let me just find that particular headline. It should be on the Star's front page. And he said, I don't care who will succeed me. And then it goes on to say, DP William Ruto pledges loyalty to the head of state, but reminds him of the promises. They made together as Jubilee leaders in 2013. Steve, it's not the first time we've had the president say this.
Yeah.
Why what do you read into that statement?
The natural reaction here, you know, Kenyan politics is organized around interest. It's about interest formation. Whose interest access to power, assemble those who can assemble those who get power, help him get to power. He's not into it about, he doesn't really care much. But I think what Ruto is getting wrong is this. There's value, if you like, playing cool. Don't be overly aggressive. You know, at the end of the day, this is the president. Even if he's the serving, he's the serving. He carries the burden of responsibility in this country. It's not you as the deputy. If he says, I'm concerned with consolidating my legacy, you have to give him space. And if Uhuru Kenyatta is going to do it, he will do it. Not because of external pressure. Because he will endorse because he thinks strategic will be strategic to his presidency interest. You get. So he will do it. If he does it, it doesn't matter the kind of pressure puts on him. Ruto puts on him about the 2013 deals. Everybody knows in this country is well entrenched. You know, even this remember those G7 Kalonzo, and many other was there. Even at one point it was Mudavadi, and then now the interest shifted, ended up with Uhuru. Now we ended up with Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto coming kumi all that. And all that. I think what I find distasteful and totally unacceptable, William Ruto deepen in the crisis of governance just because he wants to be president. At a personal level, I really have to be president. I know how it exercises my mandate at the ballot. I will leave the rest that can be determined by other. The outcome is communicated, I will accept it as it was. And then we see how we constrain the president office holder at that time. So I think it's really, and it may cost William Ruto some political, because they are supporters of who think that he has not done much in the past term, and because he has the handshake, and there's a lot of political stability, be it only for this term that is in his service. He needs to consolidate the magic and achieve something that he can. When he sits 10 years later after leaving office, he can say constitution. And I've said before, careful reading of the constitution permits the president to dispense with the deputy president. Let us not fail. The president is truly cornered. He cannot excuse himself from the deputy president. He's not elected. I mean, yes, you were just nominated. Someone who wakes up and says, how much Maria Pimerani it? For whatever reason, whether you can call it for strategic position, for whatever reason, the pathway to elect through nomination is through nomination and running as an independent candidate. In which case, you need to collect some. So the deputy president, what I'm saying is this goes slow. He needs to go slow. Just like the nuclear security, some humility. Let him paddle heavily the waters. But when it comes to very mistake, I don't think that the massive benefit will benefit him that probably. And that's probably is what will make it easy to abandon now the president to abandon. Because he'll only say, I was sabotaging my term. I'm trying to finish my term. I'm trying to finish my term and some legacy. There's no a decent excuse for Uhuru to offload Ruto if he continues like that.
I'll give you a case for the right of Kenya Burrows. Then if you want to weigh in on that before you transition to the lecture.
What we need to remember is that the president has been consistent, and he has said this continuously that Kenya has to deliver for Kenyans, that focus on delivering. And I agree because the cycle of politics to be 24/7. That immediately we finished our very tough election was even repeated. I mean, the hit on the economy, and then we are back talking about taxation. At the end of the day, you're there of the behest of this who put you there. The Mwananchi didn't put you there so that you can start talking about your future plans. I mean, that's the face of the slap. So I think we need to be ourselves in terms of focusing on why they get elected to deliver. When the time comes for election, that will happen. And like Steve rightly said, getting to a position, it's not an appointed election. It's an election. So people will choose whether to vote for you or not. So I think let's focus